the man. Ki Shabbos Hayom Lashem, because today is Shabbos. Hayom lo simtzuu basadeh. Today you will not find man in the field. As a result, you have to. We are noheg to eat 3 seudot on Shabbat. There's a machlokas of Rishonim about what is required to be eaten at Sudah Shlishit. So Tosfos says Sudah Shlishit requires bread like other meals. Tosfos has another shita that you can be yotze with basa v'dagim. Rosh says you can eat anything as long as it is made from one of the 5 types of grain: chita, sora, shibola, shual, kusmin, and shifon. Right, wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. And the Rabbeinu Tam says it's enough if you eat mine tagima, which is generally understood to be fruits and sweets. And the Ran says that peirot, fruits, are simply enough. The Mechaber Paskins as follows. Tzorach lasoso b'pat. You have to eat bread for Sudah Shlishit. So first he says you have to eat bread. And then he picks up the rush and says that some say that as long as you eat something that has one of the 5 types of grains. Like the second day in Tosfos, that you can have meat and fish. Avol lo bepeirot. V'yeshomrim da'afilu bepeirot yachol la'asota, like the Ran. Usfar rishona ika. Says the Mechaber, the best way, or the best way to eat shalashudas is to eat with bread. Shetzorach la'asosa bepas. Ela em kain hu saveya biyoter. The excuse for not having pot is if you're really full by the time shalashudas rolls around. So those are the deot, and somehow one of them or several of them have to fit into the framework of when Erev Pesach occurs on Shabbos. When should Sudah Shlishit be eaten? So Tosfos and the Rambam say only after Mincha, which is 30 minutes after Chatzot Hayom, midday, in Sha'ot Zmaniyot, okay, which is going to change now because we're going to change the clock, but it's 30 minutes after midday in Halachic time. The Bahag says you can even eat Sudah Shlishit before Mincha. The Shulchan Aruch Paskins, Zmana, when is the time for Sudah Shlishit? Mishiyagia Zman HaMincha. When the time of Mincha comes, Dahainu Mishei Shosu Mechzo Mala. So in other words, he paskins like Tosfos and the Rambam that you have to eat Sudah Shlishit 30 minutes after midday, which is the time when you can first daven Mincha. V'yemasa kodem lechein, he goes on, and if you ate it earlier than that, lo kiyei mitzvah Sudah Shlishit. You would not yotze the mitzvah of Sudah Shlishit. From the above, it becomes clear that Sudah Shlishit poses a problem this coming Shabbat. According to Tosfos, you can't eat bread nor matzah. According to the Rush, it is problematic unless you eat matzah ashira, unless you eat egg matzot. What can you eat from the Chamisha Mine Dagan until the 10th hour? Okay? The Shulchan Aruch paskins as follows. The Shulchan Aruch says the following: Sudah Shlishit zmana achar hamincha v'az eino yachol lasota lo b'matzah v'lo b'chametz. Since I have to eat Sudah Shlishit, says the Shulchan Aruch, a half hour after Mincha, which is certainly after the end of the 4th hour on Shabbos, right? I can't eat either matzah because it's after Mincha, and I can't eat chametz because it's after the zman of achilat chametz. And the only thing I can do, says the Mechaber, is alaba matzah ashira. I have to eat egg matzah. Vitzara la sota kodem shoasirit. But we still have to be mindful of the fact that we want to eat the meal at the Seder when we're hungry and we have a desire to eat. And therefore, you have to eat it between 6.5 hours and before 10 hours. Okay? Ramah Paskins, who does not recommend eating matzah ashira, Paskins as follows: Ubivindino talalu, meaning in Ashkenaz or Minhag Ashkenaz, she'eino agim le'achol matzah ashira, where the minhag is not to eat egg matzah. Yekayim sudash lishit b'minei peirot o basar b'dagim. So, in other words, according to the Ramah, right, we paskin either like the Ran, which we saw before, or like the second day in Tosfos, which is that we eat, we can be yotze sudash lishit with basar v'dagim. Okay, it seems, however, that the Ramah is seemingly suggesting that you use peirot, because he lists it first, right? What do I eat for shalashudas? Yikayim su'uda shlishit b'minei peirot, or alternatively v'vasa adagim. So he seemingly is somewhat at odds with Tosfos, who suggests that we eat meat and fish, so that if you want to be yotze, that shita as well, eat meat and fish. So in other words, what's the suggestion? So some poskim say, well, you have a choice. You can either rely solely on the Ran, that you eat minei peirot, you just eat fruit, or you can eat both. You can eat both fruit and meat or meat and fish, etc., etc. So seemingly, so that you be yotze all the shito. But the question is, why does the Ramah seem to favor eating fruit as opposed to meat and fish? It seems that the Ramah does so because fruit is not quite as filling as meat and fish, right? So the Aruch HaShulchan explains, V'hiktim mini peros lebasa v'dagim, the Ramah listed as appropriate fruit as opposed to meat and fish. Afagav de basim v'daga adifa mi peros le'inyan suda shlishit. As a general proposition, says the Aruch HaShulchan, meat and fish is a more preferable alternative than fruit. Mikol makom, but however, it's Erev Pesach. Mikol makom, Erev Pesach, peirot adife. Fruit is better. Why? Kedei shelo yisbah. He won't become satiated from eating peiros. V'yochel matzah l'te'avon. And he will want to consume the matzah. This isn't a plug, but I'm going to discuss that halacha on Wednesday in the Shabbos Hagadol drasha as to why we eat matzah b'te'avon and why we eat korban pesach al hasova. Okay. Both the Magen Avram and the Mishnah Berurah disagree and recommend basar v'dagim. They said, no, don't worry so much about that you're going to be too full. Eat. It's better that you have a more substantial shalashudas, sudash lishit, so eat meat and fish. The Mishnah Berurah also suggests that and this is interesting, although this is not my minhag, there are a number of poskim, or many poskim, who say this, that you can eat something made with matzah meal. You can eat either cooked matzah, or you can eat matzah meal. You can have knedlach, you can have matzah brai, you can have all these different things because it's not really matzah, because it's cooked, it's fried, it's whatever, and that's another alternative. Suda shlishit should, as we said, should be eaten between on this Shabbos, should be eaten between hour 6.5 of Sha'ot Zmaniyot, in other words, from the time of Mincha, up until the 10th hour. What happens if he starts pre
Can
the
you just
10th
plug in the
hour,
times of what that means, Barry? So what would that mean approximately?
I meant to look, but I would assume that it
Just
means
approximately.
somewhere between 1 and 1:30 and 5:30, 5:45 or something.
So this is obviously after Zman, the latest Zman of Achilas Chametz. Clearly.
Oh yeah, much 2.5 hours after.
Yeah, I just wanted to stress that, so there's no misunderstanding.
I'm gonna look up right now when that is. Okay, let's see. We gotta go. Okay. On Friday, okay, the earliest mincha is at 1:16. Okay, so it's at 1:16, and Plaga mincha is at 5:37. So it's 1:16 to that time. Okay, 5:37 p.m. So
would we be better off scheduling a Mincha Gedola minyan on Shabbat?
well, that was something that I wanted to discuss with you. I was going to discuss with you.
Okay. No, we could put it up to a vote.
Most people say it's better to daven mincha before you eat shalosh, but the reason that it's better to daven mincha before shalosh is that you're liable, after you eat shalosh, you're liable to forget that you have to daven mincha, this and that. On Erev Pesach, I don't think that's such a big concern, but it might be better. We can decide, or maybe have 2 minyanim, whatever. Okay. So Suda Shlishit should be started before the 10th hour. If he starts post the 10th hour, if he starts pre the 10th hour and continues post the 10th hour, there's a machlokas whether he can continue to eat mezonot. Okay, the Mishmarura says you can, and the Maram, and others say that you can't. In other words, you should not continue. You should stop at the 10th hour so that you'll be able to eat matzah b'te'avon. The Maram had an interesting minhag, and that's the following. He would eat his sudash lishit in the morning before sof zman achilat chametz. In other words, he would eat meal number 2, for lack of better nomenclature, we'll call it lunch. And then before the time to eat chametz was over, he would eat sudash lishit. And then he would eat peirot after mincha, in case he was not yotzei in the morning. In other words, in case he was not yotzei sudash lishit because he ate it before mincha time, so he would eat peirot. So in other words, in this way, he covered his bases. And this is how it's described. Kishachol Yudalad b'Nisan, when the 14th of Nisan liot b'Shabbat, like this year, Hoya Maharam ochel sudash lishit al shulchano b'boker. He would eat sudash lishit already in the morning. Ula erev ochel peirot, and after mincha he would eat peirot. Ki shema lo yotza b'mesha achal sudash lishit b'boker kodem mincha gedola. Because maybe he wasn't yotzei sudash lishit because he ate it before mincha. Leperish Rabbeinu Tam sheperish shesudash lishit eina elo la'acha mincha gedola. Rabbeinu Tam says the time for shalashudis is only after mincha gedola. If you eat before it, you're not yotzei. So the Maram, to cover the possibility of the shita of the Rabbeinu Tam, would also eat peirot later in the afternoon, despite the fact that according to some, right, according to Tosfos and others, he wouldn't be yotzei shalashudis by just eating peirot. So on the one hand, he ate shalashudis early, which only made him yotzei according to some, and then he ate peirot later, which also made him only yotzei according to others. But he felt that he was covering all possibilities. For those who are noeg like the Maram, Rav Rimon suggests the following. He says the following. Baboka Yom HaShabbos, Ein Habeis Man Lechol Pot. Right? By the time you finish davening, we're going to daven at 6:30. Let's Bona Gid will finish davening at 8:15. Everybody has to go home. The last time to eat chametz is, if my memory serves me correctly, 10:12. Shechein tzorich lahaspik litpalel tfilat shachrit. You have to finish davening. V'leachol et shtei haruchot lifnei sof hashar revit. In other words, you have to eat what I've called lunch, according to the Maram, and Suda Shlishit by 10:12. Lachein, says Rav Rimon, Harotze linhog b'derech zu, somebody who wants to adopt the minhag, or somebody who has the minhag of the Maram, yafsik be'emtza sudato, he should stop eating in the middle of his lunch meal. Yivarech birkat hamazon, he should bench. Yasei hafsaka mesuyemet, he should wait a bit. Yitol yodav, he should then wash again. V'yamshich es suda, and that would be his suda shlishit. Yesh lahafsik ben shtei hasuda, kedei shebirchat hasuda hashiniya lo tiyeh bracha she'ena tzricha. In other words, if you don't wait a sufficient time, why are you making another bracha, right? Ein hagdara brura laorech hafsaka, says Rav Rimon. There's no set time for how long that break should be. Ach nireh shehamtana shel mispar dakot maspika. If you wait several minutes, it's enough. L'shem kach nitan lomod bein shtei hasudot. Let's say sachutza lezman ma. You can either learn or go outside for a bit, or afilu rak lahafsik ma, or just stop. Okay. It is preferable, as I said, to eat suda shlishit before mincha. Okay. As an interesting aside, and this I really found fascinating, the Zohar brings down that Reb Shimon ben Yochai on this Shabbos, in other words, when Erev Pesach was Shabbos, would be Yotzei Suda Shlishit on this type of Shabbos by reciting a Devar Torah. Okay? He didn't eat. And I've told everybody that story about the Beis Halevi. If somebody didn't hear it, I'll just repeat it very quickly. The Beis Halevi, who's the first member of the Soloveitchik dynasty, so to speak, once got to a town, and came time for Shalashudas, and he asked for Lechem Mishnah. And somebody in the audience who wanted to show what a Talmud Chacham he was said to the Beis Halevi, "What do you need Lechem Mishnah? You can be Yotzei Shalashudas with Divrei Torah." And apparently, without missing a beat, the Beis Halevi turned to him and said, "Listen, if I say a Devar Torah and somebody asks me a question that slugs up my Devar Torah, that contradicts my Devar Torah, then it's as if I didn't say a Devar Torah. You cannot slug up bread. You can't contradict bread. So please bring me two things." But anyway, so the Zohar recites the fact that Reb Shimon bar Yochai, when Erev Pesach occurred on Shabbos, would be Yotzei Sudash Lishit by reciting a Dvar Torah. The Gaon, the Vilna Gaon, understands from this that according to the Zohar, when Erev Pesach is Shabbos, there is no real chiyuv of Sudash Lishit, as there is none when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos, which seems a little strange because, of course, there's no chiyuv of Sudash Lishit because you don't eat on Yom Kippur. But he puts it in the same category. From this understanding, he extrapolates that there's an obligation to eat bread at Sudash Lishit. In other words, what is Sudam Shlishit Mechayev? Like the first day in Tosfot, because otherwise, Reb Shimon ben Yochai would have eaten something out. He would have eaten fruit. He would have eaten meat. He would have eaten something. By virtue of the fact that he said, "No, I'm not going to eat anything, but just simply say a Devar Torah," says the Gra, it is clear that the Mechayev, what obligates you to eat Sudash Lishit, is bread. And if there is no obligation or you cannot eat, then there is no chiyuv of Sudash Lishit. Okay. So in summary, for Sudash Lishit, there are several options available. The most obvious is that you eat lunch, you wait till after the Zman of Mincha, and you eat either meat and fish, or you eat payros, or you eat some combination of both. If you want to take into account more shitot, then you eat that in the morning and you only eat payrot like the Maram did. But that's how you deal with, or of course, according to the Machaber, you can eat matzah shira. You can continue to eat egg matzahs as you did if you made motzi on them for Friday night and Shabbos lunch. Okay? Now, what about achilas kitnios? Legumes, the famous legumes. I said last night in shul when I was discussing this in another context that kitnios have become a growth industry. So, but the question is, can I eat kitnios on Erev Pesach, shecholios b'Shabbos? So the answer clearly, until sof achilas man chometz, in other words, to 10-12 this year, is that there's no problem whatsoever. You can eat rice, you can eat beans, you can eat whatever, any of those that you want. There's no problem. What about post Zman Achilas Chometz? Okay. Could I eat kitnios after the time of Mincha for Sudash Shit? Okay. As I said, Friday night and Shabbos morning until the Sof Zman Achilas Chometz, there's no problem. Okay. As to eating them at Sudash Lishit, there is a machlokas. Why? Because kitnios are not real chametz. I mean, there's been a proliferation of kitnios of what you can eat it, you can't eat it, whatever. But one thing it's not. It is not chametz. Okay? I said this in shul a week or so ago. They tried to determine what generated the gzeira of kitnios, okay? And there's a gentleman by the name of, I think it's Professor Emmanuel, who did some research, and he came to the following conclusion, which I think is fascinating. He said that in Europe, what used to happen was that there was a triennial cycle for how you dealt with fields. In year one of the cycle, you planted wheat. In year two of the cycle, you planted legumes. And in year three of the cycle, you allowed this field to lay fallow, except there were things left over. So in other words, you ended up growing some wheat, which was left over, right? Stuff that had fallen and had whatever, and some legumes, not lagoons, legumes. And as a result, they were concerned that the kitniot would get mixed with when they cut what was in the field. I mean, there's no Shemitah in Europe, right? When they cut what was in the field, the legumes would get mixed with the wheat, and you would have chametz. And therefore, they decided, given that triennial cycle, to ban kitnios. But what about kitnios for shalosh shuras? So there is a machlokas, but the general rule, or the general psak, is that we do not eat kitnios for sudash lishit. Okay. All right, just quickly a few more things about Erev Pesach that happens on Shabbos. Okay, so one is, for instance, can I eat, what do they call them? Pesach rolls that are made from
Matzah meal.
Matzah meal. Can I eat them?
I have a great recipe.
Okay, can I eat them Erev Pesach Shechol Yos b'Shabbos? Okay. Generally, we paskin that we don't, because it may be considered eating matzah on Erev Pesach, which we don't do. Okay. If you make cakes with matzah meal, There are poskim who say that that's all right. First of all, you don't eat it b'tor bread. I mean, in other words, not that matzah, not that Pesach rolls are bread necessarily, but that's why you eat it. You eat it as a bread replacement. Cake you don't eat as a bread, okay? Although many say stay away, in other words, stay away from matzah meal, etc., etc., etc. Okay. However, knedlach you can eat because knedlach are not baked. Knedlach are cooked, right? So that's not a problem. Or you can also eat schnitzel, which is dipped in matzah meal and is fried. Okay. To be honest with you, I grew up and I don't eat any of that. I eat it on Pesach, but I don't eat it on Erev Pesach. My grandmother, Allah Shalom, used to make it's sort of it's a bit of, I'll end with this. It's a bit of a funny story. My grandmother used to make a Migdal on Erev Pesach that was called roita potatoes, red potatoes. And what was it? She used to take some meat, generally lamb, interestingly, and cook it in with potatoes and with borscht on Erev Pesach. And as a result, the potatoes became red. So it was called roita potatoes, red potatoes. There are two stories about this. One is that, and she also used to make a dish called angemach, which was like a matzah spread, which was made from beets. One year, my grandmother wasn't feeling well, and she said to my father, Sonny, if you're going to be on the Lower East Side, he used to go to the Lower East Side for business, could you see if you could find somebody with a good hashgacha that can sell you borscht and angemachs, which was the beet spread. So my father went around. I think it was Gus's Pickles, and he goes to my father says to him, "Listen, my mother-in-law always makes this by herself, but she's not feeling well, and I just want to assure her that everything is done kadas and kedin, and she can feel comfortable buying the angemachs and the borscht from you." And the guy Gus says, "Listen, let me tell you something. We get all new barrels for Pesach. Everything is changed. But if your mother-in-law is so upgehit, she's so frum, she shouldn't be eating out. She shouldn't buy from anybody." So my father says, "You sound like the right bill. I'll buy it from him." But the other thing is my sister, Allah Shalom, my sister Vivian gets married, and she and her husband moved to Spokane, Washington, because he is a chaplain in the army. It's going to be Erev Pesach, and she wants to make roita potatoes, right? But she doesn't understand that roita potatoes is because my grandmother took potatoes and meat and poured borscht into them. She thinks the potatoes come red. So not Spokane, she moves to Tacoma, Washington. So she goes to fruit and vegetable stores in Tacoma and she can't find red potatoes. And then she goes to fruit and vegetable stores in Seattle, Washington, where she went to school, and she can't find red potatoes. So in desperation, she calls my mother. She says, "I can't have roita potatoes." My mother says, "Why can't you have roita potatoes?" "I can't find red potatoes." My mother says, "Just find some kosher Pesach borscht, pour it in, and you'll have red potatoes because that's what your grandmother does." Anyway, but one thing I want to say is that Pesach is a holiday where there are a lot of family minhagim, and you should cherish them because it's really part of Pesach, and everybody should have a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. And please God, I'll see you Wednesday night at 7:30. Anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Feel free to unmute yourself. I just want to say that I want to give a tremendous, although I know he'll object, but we all owe a tremendous yasher koach to Barry over the course of these last several weeks when we've dealt with Erev Pesach Shechal b'Shabbat. We've had such a wealth of material, and looking back on it now, we can just appreciate it even more. And now that we've come to this juncture, I just wanted to say thank you on everybody's behalf. And
But I want to
slowly,
say
but
what I always say in response to this. I appreciate what Jay has to say. I really do. I want to thank all of you because you've all made me learn a lot more. Morty Landau is on is online, and he will tell you what my wife's response to all of this is. But you've all made me learn, and I really appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure and a real zchus for me to be able to do it.
and I hope to upload.
Wait. His wife is on.
Excuse me. You have
The
the
wife
floor.
generally stays on mute. The wife is very happy that he has been doing this and is grateful for all that she's learned from him too. The wife is now getting off.
Thank you, wife. We dare not say that R word. I also wanted to say that we recently premiered our Migdal HaShoshanim YouTube channel, on which will be a repository, God willing, for all of these shirim, so that the next time we have Erev Pesach Shechal B'Shabbat, we'll have a wealth of material to review. And it was very gratifying to see so many people here this afternoon. And just a quick reminder that this evening at 8 o'clock, we have the Daf Yomi Siyum of the Sefer Pesachim. Hope to see all of you there. And on Wednesday evening, yes, please.
I just want to say one thing. You will not see me on the Siyum because I have to make the Siyum on Thursday. And so I don't want to participate in tonight's Siyum, but I urge everybody else to participate.
Well, we will see you Wednesday evening at 7:30, and I'll send out the Zoom link for the Migdal HaShoshanim Shabbat HaGadol, Shabbat HaGadol Drasha. It's very good. So I want to wish everybody a good afternoon.
Harry?
Bruce, yes.
Your comment just triggered a question in my head. Since I'm a Bahur, should I also be skipping
No.
the
All you have to hear is my
Siyum
Siyum.
tonight? Since I'm
You can hear multiple Siyum. First of all, just as a general background, there are two questions involved in making the Siyum on Thursday. The first question is, why do we make a Siyum? We make a Siyum because the Bachorim of Klal Yisrael were saved, right? And they were going to fast as an acknowledgement that they were saved, but they weren't saved on Thursday. They were saved on Shabbos. So according to some poskim, the whole thing you don't have to do the whole thing. According to others, no, since it's not Erev Pesach and you're not busy with all the whatever you call of Erev Pesach, you should fast. But the compromise in most poskim say have it on Thursday and you don't have to fast. But you are simply participating in my Sudas mitzvah for having made a Siyum. So you go ahead and enjoy the Siyum tonight and enjoy it again on Thursday.
So the best thing I can do is go to a Siyum every day this week and just eat like crazy.
Well, you're not going to eat much. Well, I don't know. Maybe this year is going to be different in Shul. Generally, there's not much because it's Erev Pesach, but it's not Erev Pesach. So we'll see. All right.
Normally, Eli brings his leftover pastry, but he's not going to be with us this year. But I did speak to him. He's doing well, and he says hello to everybody.
Okay, good.
Barry, one more quick anecdote, reminiscing about family customs. More challenging than fasting on Yom Kippur, because our family also had the custom of nothing with matzah meal on Erev Pesach. So what was there to eat? We would arrive in the Catskills, and there'd be all these cakes and treats and all these delicacies that we remembered from a year before, and we couldn't touch a thing. It was the most challenging culinary experience. Like I say, even more so than fasting on Yom Kippur. We had to wait just another day to have the Grossinger's rolls and cakes and things.
Okay.
I say there anyway.
Listen, Pesach cakes and all that stuff is only good on Pesach.
Exactly. All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.